I'm Debra Sofia Magdalene. This is a Mastery Path Connections interview with my good friend Harun Rabbani. Harun, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on your beautiful interview.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm so excited because tonight you're going to be speaking for us at Mastery Path. But before we actually go into the session this evening, I wanted to get to know you, the person. What is it that drives you?
Very strict mother and a very strict father. No, it's a joke, it's not true. That's usually the case with Asians when we grew up. Actually, my father was super strict and my mother was like holding the space. What really drives me is, I guess, there's a lot of pain in the world. Pain in terms of children's pain in terms of people's health, relationships, and now my good friend, I can say that, Dr. John Gray, he says that life is all about your relationships and your health. The rest is all just stuff. So I guess that's my biggest driver. A, to improve my relationships. B, I'm okay on the health front actually. I'm doing pretty well. But I wasn't doing so well when I was a child. From the age of 6 months, I used to suffer from epileptic seizures.
Oh, did you?
I'd say about 3 or 4 times a year, every single year, up to the age of 8. And it was only at the age of 8 that I was consciously aware that I was about to have a seizure. So I was a very sick child. I was in and out of hospital all the time. But I don't know what happened. Well, I kind of do know what happened. By the time I got to adulthood, though, I never felt ill. Occasionally I'd have the sniffles, I don't know which one. But anyway, cold. But actually in my adult life, except for one occasion, I was never bedridden and I've never been ill. So
did you go right to the epilepsy?
Something just suddenly stopped. I don't know how deep you want to go spiritually here, or how much you want to go on the surface level, but on a spiritual level, I don't believe it was a physical thing. I actually think it was an awakening process for me from when I was a child. So without going too much into depth, I think that's what it was, less of physical. And what was interesting was, this is amazing because since 2006 I've been researching the science behind consciousness, and what I found was how science explains so well how spirituality and consciousness moves. So for example, after the first epileptic seizure, my mother was totally unaware of that, as in she wasn't aware that I was about to have one. Thereafter, every single time, 2 hours before a seizure, she'd get jitters through her body. She'd know exactly 2 hours. Doesn't matter where I was. She'd know that I was about to have a seizure. Talk about connection. You know, the biggest disease, or the cause of the biggest disease in humanity's history and today, is this illusion of separation. And my mother demonstrated to me clear cut that there is no separation between us and the other.
Exactly, and a lot of people experience this as well, especially like twins, you know, like identical twins have got a very strong connection in particular. It's like they're from the same womb, the same egg.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, I just want to pursue that further. We've met before, a number of years, but the fact that I'm just touching you, now scientific experiments shows a couple of things. First of all, we've just had a DNA exchange. And I'll give you an example. There was an experiment done by Dr. Gariev, who's a Russian scientist, and the Russian scientists are very big on energy medicine. So what they did was this: they took a vacuum, and within the vacuum, I'm not talking about a vacuum cleaner, I'm talking about a container, and they removed all air from that container, everything that they could remove. There was nothing. So it's like being in outer space. But the only thing they couldn't remove are the photons, or the particles of light. They took a strand of DNA. Obviously, they had very powerful magnifying glasses, microscopes, I should say, when they did this. They took a strand of DNA and they placed it into the container. Then what happened was amazing. They knew that the photons of light, the particles of light, would start attaching themselves magnetically to the DNA. And so they had this spiral of light caused by the DNA. Then they removed the DNA and they thought, okay, natural thing was the light would spread out. A miracle happened. The DNA was removed and the spiral of light was still there. What does that mean? It means that every single place you go, every single thing you touch, you leave an energetic imprint, whether you like it or not. So that's the first bit. So we have this connection. Second bit, another amazing experiment. Dr. Cleve Baxter, he was a military doctor, and what he did was, he did many experiments, you'll know some of them. This particular experiment, what they did was they took a soldier and they put him into a room which was totally cut off from the rest of the world. It's, I forget the name now, it's called it'll come to me eventually, Faraday cage, that's what it is. So basically what that means is nothing can go in and nothing can go out. So they put him in the room and they took a strand of DNA, a sample of DNA from his inside of his cheek, and they put it onto this particular instrumentation. I can't remember from the top of my head what it's called, but what they did was they were measuring the vibrations, the frequencies given out by this DNA. Now DNA, if you keep it out, if it's outside the body, it will last 2 or 3 days if you keep it in good condition, the optimal condition. So what they did was they put this DNA onto this particular machine, and they made the guy watch movies. And what did he watch? He watched movies of nature, of horses. They made him watch horror and porn. What they found, absolutely amazing, was when he was watching the more natural stuff, the nature and the birds and so on, they found that the DNA, the reading of the DNA, the frequency was like nice and calm, nice and fluid. But when he was watching the horrific stuff, the porn, the DNA would have these major spikes.
So this is the DNA that's in the Petri dish?
This is the DNA in the Petri dish, separated from him. Now, bearing in mind, there's absolutely zero connection between the two, other than it was from his body. Now, the next thing they did was, they kept him in the room and they took the machine and they put it into another part of the building. Same results. They did the same again, they put him into another building. Same results. They did the same experiment again and they went 200 miles away. Same results. What it means is, if you follow this hypothesis, you'll find that what it means is, when we have this connection, it's called entanglement, there is no separation. What it also, the significance to you and I is this: the fact that we've exchanged DNA. When you're alert, have you ever had those feelings where perhaps suddenly, from being calm, you're suddenly upset or suddenly super happy? Or maybe you're in that state where perhaps you're not so happy, and all of a sudden you feel this calmness. Well, the fact that you and I are entangled, if something happens to me, quite dramatic, positive or negative, you will pick up on that energy. And the more DNA exchange there is, of course, so obviously I was born from my mother's womb, she will pick it up more. But it also happens in relationships.
Absolutely.
You know, you can be in a relationship, and for the men out there, you guys, you need to watch it, because women are tuned into their intuition a lot better. So when you're messing about, they pick it up. Speak to my ex-wife, and this is not because when I was married, but even after I was divorced, what I found was, long after I was divorced, she would get all grumpy and upset at times I was with another woman, not even doing anything. She'd pick that information up. Not because she knew my diary, no, we were totally cut off from each other, except for the other weekend, regarding kids. So it's very important to be aware of who you hang around with and who you effectively exchange DNA with. Now, I know this lady's always happy and merry, so I'm cool to exchange DNA here.
But that also applies to sexual relationships in particular. I read recently that you've got to be very, very careful who you sleep with. Only sleep with people that you want to become like.
Absolutely, totally agree. It's just, I mean, what I've just said reinforces that. So, you know, we're all made out of energy, and Nikola Tesla, the famous scientist who discovered free energy, or how to create free energy, and many other things, he said, if you only understand the universe, then all you need to understand is energy and vibration. So if you're hanging around, say your vibration is pretty high, you're not a miserable person all the time, and you hang around with somebody who, you know, especially God, it works the other way. Say, for example, you want to rescue the damsel in distress, whoever that damsel is. She's generally a bit miserable and a bit, you know, I'm a victim, but her energy will probably come up to meet you kind of like halfway. You make love, you have sex with that person, you are going to exchange that DNA, you're going to exchange that energy, and you will pick up on her stuff, and vice versa, because there's a lot of miserable guys out there and really amazing women out there. So, you know, if you hang around and really get intimate with, I'm sorry to say, the wrong people, relatively speaking, then that's what your own energy is going to equate to eventually.
If that happens, is there a way of cleaning up your energy?
Yes, there is. There's a number of ways of cleaning up the energy. First of all, first thing to do is, if that happens, is before you even go anywhere near them again, you need to spend me time alone. And one of the most powerful ways, actually, believe it or not, is to get a handful of sea salt, you know, the rock that you get from shops. You know, I wouldn't use the processed stuff.
The rock salt.
The rock salt. Get a handful of that, stick it in your bath, have a bath in that, bathe in that for, I don't know, 20 minutes, half an hour, an hour. And then when you're doing that, you've got to visualize all your negative energies being washed away and being cleaned away. That's one way to do it. I'm giving you the extremely accelerated, fast version of it, of course. There's a bit more to it.
Can you use Epsom salts for that as well?
You can use Epsom salts. Epsom salts has other effects which are great, but for this particular exercise, I would use just rock salt. Okay. Keep it nice and simple.
Yeah.
The other thing I would do is, there's no separation, and so during the talk we'll talk about that, we'll discuss it. There's no separation from one and the other. So even if I've not met somebody ever in my life, there's a connection. There's a connection between me and the plants and the fish swimming around. There's a connection between you and the rest of humanity, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, the cosmos. When you're intimate with somebody, it's not a connection you create a cord between yourself. It's almost like a thread between yourself. And if you've had sex, it's between your sexual organs. Yeah. And what you do is, in terms of, it doesn't matter whether you believe this or not, just do it. Your belief system, it's not a placebo thing. It's nothing to do with your belief system. What you do is you close your eyes, you visualize, and again, the simple version, you visualize that there's cords between you and the other person. And then you imagine you've got a big sword or scissors, and you cut through that cord. And you just cut. So there's absolutely zero cords between them. Those are two powerful ways. Like I said, it's not a placebo thing, it's an energetic thing. You just go ahead and do it, and you will see a big difference.
I've used the cord cutting exercise, you know, like when I got divorced, me and my husband did a cord cutting exercise together. I knew that I wasn't ready for any more relationships for a long time, because I knew that I had to work on myself, because we attract somebody on the same vibration.
Absolutely.
So if I'm going through a very emotional time, I'm going to attract somebody also in a very emotional time, and then it's heading towards disaster.
Absolutely, and this is why rebounds, for the most part, do not work. Why? And I've been there. When after my divorce, I met somebody from abroad. I met up with her, and you know, she was a very good person for me at that moment in time in relation to my vibration. She was a great listener. I was a great victim, so you know. The thing is, I don't like victimhood, so it didn't take me long to start stepping away from it. And she actually left her country to move to the UK to be with me. But within a week, I thought, oh my God, what have I done? And me being very silly, of course, I thought rather than break that relationship, because she left her country for me, I stayed in a relationship that technically I shouldn't have, simply because I just thought she was the wrong person for me. My hair went from black to grey. So guys, if you want to keep your hair black, that's not her fault. She's who she is. I was who I was. So yeah, absolutely. So, and the other thing to bear in mind, of course, in a relationship, in a sexual relationship, even if you're married to somebody, it's very important that you cut the cords after intimacy. Why? Because women carry a lot of energy, and so when you have that cord between you and the guy, what it does is it saps your energy. It really drains away your energy. Cutting that cord doesn't mean you're breaking the relationship. You're just breaking that leaking, that bleeding of energy. So it's like you're basically stopping yourself from bleeding.
Containing your energy.
It is about containing energy. So yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting as well, because I've felt when other, if I've been in a relationship, I've felt when the other person is hooking back into me. And so, that's sometimes a process that you constantly need to do, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That, you can feel the hooks coming back in and poof.
Absolutely, and one of the biggest issues for people is that, especially healers and therapists, you guys, you need to sort yourself out, because I found a lot of healers, what they do is they go in and do healing work, and they get hooked in, and they wonder why they end up feeling sick. And I know people who dealt with cancer end up with cancer.
Yeah, you're not clearing the energy.
You're not clearing your own energy. You're not walking your talk. You're not living what you're teaching others. It's so important that you have your boundaries and your protection around you.
Yeah. So energy is a fascinating subject, and it's one that we could talk on all day. recently you've held, you hosted a big conference in London. Do you want to just mention about your work there in consciousness?
Oh, well, you know, my biggest fascination, because I used to teach sales and marketing, and I did that for a number of years. Not because I was any good at training. I won awards for my training, but because I thought that was the thing to do, because that was my area of expertise. But I asked this question, so what? I'm teaching somebody to do something, but really they're not making a difference to anyone other than their own pocket. So that's when I I stopped teaching it there and then, and I started reading and I'm trying to understand the synergy between science and spirituality. Because I got raised in a religious background, I was more fascinated by the spiritual side. So I was reading and researching, and I read this book called The Divine Matrix by Greg Braden, and I thought, oh my God, he is talking about the very thing I believe in, and he's giving me the science behind it. So all of that led to the evolution of my radio station and my shows about consciousness and science and so on. And so anyway, 2013 came, and I heard the guy who wrote the book, Greg Braden, was speaking at this conference. Now for the last, I don't know how many years I've been trying to get hold of him. I thought, man, he's got a 2-year waiting list. Everyone says yes to an interview by me. I'm a bit cocky, I have to admit, and arrogant at times. I've got a big ego, you know. I couldn't get hold of him. I thought, you know what? I want to be on the same stage as him. And I just left it at that. I didn't know who organised the event. So that year passed, and then the next year they started promoting the event. I thought, oh, they haven't invited me to this event yet. Okay, something about this intention that I teach isn't working. And then another year comes, which is this year, earlier this year, 2015. I thought, oh, I've not been invited to... I found out who the event organizer was, and I've not been invited yet. And then about 6 or 7 weeks prior to the event, I get a phone call by the organizer saying, Harun, can you support our event, please? Can you help us? And I said, yeah, what do you want, advertising, promotion, Facebook marketing? I said, no, can you host the event? So there you go, my intention of being on the same stage with Greg Braden happened. Not only did I have the honour, and it was truly a humbling experience, of sharing the stage. I had the honour of meeting I met Lynn McTaggart before. I had the honour of introducing and closing her talk, and Teal Swan, and so many other amazing speakers. And you know, what's so beautiful is the world is now waking up to the synergy between science and consciousness. And the biggest lesson, and I would take this from that event, was there is no separation. The whole illusion is that we are separate, and that is the cause of all diseases. This whole thing, we talk about relationship and energy. A lot of people in the transformation field have issues with abundance. Yeah. They're abundant about their health, they're abundant about everything else, but oh my God, they're bankrupt, they're bust. So, but that's a relationship as well. Yeah. And until you understand the energy connection between you and money, you and the rock or the plants, you're kind of like half-baked. So you really, I mean, what I'd love to see more people do is learn to build these relationships between them, other sentient beings, the non-sentient beings, their work, relationships beyond their family and their loved one. So really, I mean, energy is everything as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and everything is love.
And love is energy.
It is.
That's all it is.
Yeah. So thank you, Harun. It's been fascinating talking with you. I wish we had longer to talk. Maybe we'll do another interview another time.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this.
Lovely. If you look on the box below, you'll be able to find out how to contact Harun. And thank you very much for tuning in to Mastery Path Connections. See you later.
See you soon.